Our scene takes place in the waterfront district. It's not been too long since Jacob encountered this interesting person claiming to be of the same clan as the Prince Lysander Eudosha, and after a rough introductory conversation, decided to move their chat out of the alleyway, and Jacob has brought him to a bar. This particular one is closed out, no one else is coming in, and after some smooth talking and friendly conversation, he managed to use his familiarity to earn them a room they could chat away in, at least until the bucket comes back to boot them out in half an hour.
Interesting place we find ourselves in.
It's a nice enough start.
So, what I've gathered so far about this city is, no offense, I'm sure it's nothing to do with you, but we are a few steps down from clusterfuck. It's honestly a little while before the shit hits the fan. Is that a correct assumption?
Something like that, yes.
So, what are all the clans that are active in this burg, if you don't mind me asking?
This one right here, this is primarily Toreador domain. We're right next to the Ventrues, one of the Ventrues areas.
Don't even get me started. The blue bloods always spit down on everybody else. Let's see. Anything I should be made aware of? Strange happenings? Odd occurrences? Something like that?
I think odd occurrence has been the identifier for the entire week. To be honest with you, I think that you might want to find the sheriff, actually. The sheriff is working with our brothers and sisters to figure out some of the more unusual aspects of recent occurrences. I don't have much information on those yet.
Alright. Keep in mind, he does like to, out of character, keep a rather good emotional tab on people, so during the whole time you're talking, he's basically scrutinizing you and trying to pick up information from your facial features and stuff like that. So that's what I'm rolling.
No problem.
Empathy plus perception. And let's see how we do. Ooh, quite a lot of information. So, is there anything that he's being rather duplicitous about? Is he revealing a lot in his face? What's he...
There is nothing directly false in what he says, but what you will notice is he is downplaying somewhat his involvement with the sheriff. It seems as if he has more interest in it than he admits in the recent events. So aside from that, you would notice that throughout most of the conversation, he's been generally truthful.
So basically, how I'm going to roll that is every So often when the sheriff is mentioned, your face kind of twitches. There's a subtle tick in your left eye, and my character just sort of picks up on that.
Not a problem. That works for me.
All right. So let's see. The sheriff is of what clan again?
The sheriff would be one of our fellow sorcerers.
He looks genuinely perplexed at this. What? Hmm. I don't think I've heard of them before. Maybe I have it, just by a different name. Hmm.
Oh, I'm sure you have. He'll draw in the air. TRE. See
Oh.
if that rings any bells.
You see his face just kind of lights up. Oh, I get you. You have to pardon me. I'm still adjusting. And I did suffer a little bit of a car crash when I first came into town. Just tries and laughs it off.
Be careful with those.
Oh, you're telling me?
The senator can point you to the sheriff or get you in touch with him pretty easily.
Are you sure you trust one of the blood mages in such a crucial position?
Personally, I don't hold much more trust for them than anybody else does. But I cannot fault their usefulness in that position.
Understandable. It's just been my experience that they've always been more clan first, second, if you understand my meaning. Kind
No, I get you.
of duplicitous in their loyalty, so to speak. Mm.
I'd say the same for most venture.
Oh, you see, he gets this extremely stern look on his face as if he's trying to swallow a large caliber round of bullet. Yes, I find them particularly underhanded in some of their dealings.
Well, you're going to find there are quite a few of them in this city, so you'll probably end up having to deal with them one way or the other while you're here to answer.
Mm. Unfortunately, they're like rats. They scurry everywhere. Oh, never mind that I said that. He just kind of grins this award-winning grin and just kind of tassels his hair like, I'm such an idiot. I'm just a goof. Play it off, play it off.
Jacob shakes his head. He's taking your dislike of them with a grain of salt. Thinks you're overplaying it just a bit. But most people don't like the venture, so it's understandable. Oh, that ain't the case. Was there anything else you really needed me to help you find in the city while you're here? You said you were trying to get your bearings and some such.
Oh, believe me, I am completely and utterly lost. It has been so long since I've been anywhere south of New Orleans. And usually, even then, I didn't stray much from Lafayette Cemetery. That was usually my own domain. So, I couldn't be more clueless.
Well, it's common knowledge, but the wild ones have a good amount of territory northwest from the projects and such. And the others, well, they're pretty much where you expect them to be if you just look at what would attract the most in the city. As for our good prince, not quite sure whereabouts he plans on setting up. He's still working out some of his other details.
Oh, and by the way, out of character, I'm going to be rolling that emotional perception thing again to see how your actual beat is on Lysander, to see if I can pick up any useful information.
Go right ahead. On that one, I'm going to counter roll as he is keeping a mostly neutral expression where he can on Lysander. No success, though.
Yeah, we basically wind up picking up nothing.
He doesn't quite manage to keep a stone face, but you don't quite manage to notice that he's not keeping a stone face.
So basically, it's kind of a chess game of us trying to deal each other out at this point. Oh, by the way, I apologize about sneaking up on you earlier. I have to keep my hunting instinct sharp, unlike a lot of the more noble aspects of our own kind. I'm much more of a traditionalist. I like to hunt and chase after and be like an actual decent kindred, if you don't mind me saying so. And at first I didn't think you were one of us. I just thought you were perhaps a human or whatever have you.
No, it's no problem. I understand entirely.
You know, so when they get civilized, they get a little too soft, and it's never good for them.
Oh, nothing wrong with civilization, but you don't ever want to forget who and what you are.
He just sort of gets a strange look on his face as if he's particularly concentrating. As he looks out inside, he's just sort of looking out at the vast swathes of dilapidated buildings and whatnot. You would think with all this untapped territory, this place would be a buzzing hive of community, but it seems almost like a ghost town.
We live in interesting times. Some people appreciate it. Some of ours prefer to sleep through them and wait till the next lull period.
Any reports on anarch activity or anything strange? Sabbat incursions? Anything I need to be made aware of?
Jacob raised an eyebrow at that. Lysander didn't tell you.
I was given surprisingly little information. Of course, I am an analyst. I do study a situation very thoroughly before I stick my foot into a situation, so forgive me for being invasive, but, you know, if we're going to salvage this town, I think I need to know what I'm dealing with.
No, I understand entirely. Just what is Lysander expecting you to salvage?
The details he worked out between my curmudgeon and himself, he basically arranged for political aid and my personal assistance in dealing with the tumultuous political situation, but I was getting surprisingly little details.
What is your character's current willpower?
Current willpower, unfortunately for you, old buddy, would be 7, so let's see how you...
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 successes on reading your mind. Jacob is going to be digging into your mind, looking for all the information relating to your recent conversations with Lysander and your purpose relating to him in the city.
Well, let's see. You're seeing a lot of flashes, basically not a lot of conversation occurring about Lysander. The whole reasoning behind him actually being in the city, his Primogen Thomas Whitman actually having entrusted him to be somewhat of a bodyguard and protector to Lysander, given the fact that he felt a little uncertain about his position of power in the city and that things might be a bit more tumultuous and sketchy than he could handle in the first place. But other than that, there's not really a lot of information you dig up. Now, here's a small little out-of-character question. Is this detectable by any means? Do I feel an actual sensation, or are you just picking up information out of my brain?
No, Jacob is just digging for information, and to the best of my knowledge, you don't get to detect when telepathy is being used.
Alrighty. Perfectly fine with that. I just didn't know.
Jacob's demeanor a bit. He leans back and looks towards you. Well, I would say, given the Sorry, I was just double reading. Make sure I got that right.
No problem.
I would say the greatest worries at the moment that Lysander might have would be coming from the Tremere and the Ventrue. Primarily political, because those were his rivals in his push for Princeton.
Perhaps you can elaborate a little bit?
There was a woman, Iris Breckenridge. She served as the seneschal under her sire, the Lady Orchid. With the Lady Orchid's unfortunate demise and some other unfortunate activities that likewise resolve themselves as leaving her in the position to take over where her sire left off. The question was raised whether a different candidate might best serve the position, so they led to the Primogen Council. And it was with the vote of the council that the possibility was between Iris, the Tremere regent, he who currently resides as Primogen of his clan, and Lysander for the position. I hear Lysander won by a close call.
At this, his ears perk up, and he's going to be scrutinizing you really closely with these very deep, very vulture-like eyes of his, while he runs another emotional screening of your facial features and basically picking up what scraps of information he can. A close call, really. And I pick up absolutely jack nothing.
Jeez. Well, I'll just be able to tell you that from what you're listening to and looking at, you're going to pick up more or less neutrality and then surprise when he mentions the close call for Lysander.
Do you have any details regarding that?
No, I did not pay very much attention to the actual unveiling of the votes. I only listened to the aftermath as it was brought from ear to ear.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, where do you,
But, hmm?
if I may be so bold as to inquire, if you had to make a guess, where would you say the attack came from?
What attack?
Well, you said there was a close call, and one can infer that.
Oh, I apologize. No political close call, that the vote was very close.
Oh. You'll have to forgive me. I thought it was one to his mortality.
No, there have been very few fights between ours, other Camarilla kindred in the city. There have been few and far in between. You can roll perception on that, because that was a lie.
Of course. I was basically waiting to see if you were going to come to it, but I was going to run away. And to detect a lie, you can either use subterfuge or empathy, right?
Perception, either subterfuge or empathy, yes.
Alright, let's see how this goes. And
What is that?
roll an extra dice because I forgot one. My bad. Let's see.
Not a problem. That's so rude. Oh man. Okay.
I basically have the inclination that you are lying. I can't tell what about. So I'm just giving you this very scrutinizing look, like I know you're up to something. I just can't tell the details of it.
Jacob just looks back at the looking passively. He's a Toreador. He's always up to something.
Now, regarding this incident, it was basically the vote for the Permanent Council that caused this little political discord.
Yes.
And let me guess, the Ventru being typically ones to play behind the shadows and do what they can to influence the humans in an area. They were trying to dig into his power base and see what they could find regarding weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and such. Yeah.
I don't rightfully know. I don't much have contact within the Ventru's inner workings at this time. Something I'm having to work on. Lysander would know better what exactly they've been up to, as it would have more directly influenced him. Only things I know for certain is they were busy trying to clean up their own mess, so they might not have had time to work too much on him. The greatest danger at this point is the Sabbat rolling around the city.
The plot thickens. Now there's Sabbat in the city.
Oh, they've been Sabbat in the city for some time, unfortunately.
What can you tell me with regards to what's been going on that front?
A pack came into town, what was it, 4 or 5 months ago. They were dealt with. What I can only assume from their reactions and conversations, the leader, or at least their superior in the pack, has come forth to play his games. And this person, well, does the name Apollo mean anything to you?
At this point, I am going to bluff my ass off like I actually know what I'm talking about. So let's see how that goes. Da-da-da-da. Boom, 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 boom. Aha. And basically, what you get out of this is a vaguely passable lie if you're not rolling against it. I heard the name, I heard a lot of the details, but like I said, I suffered some head trauma recently. It's kind of in bits and pieces.
Understandable. You really should get yourself a nap. I hear that helps with that.
Uh,
But he is a undead with a disliking of your clan, and seems to be very pointedly aimed at making Lysander's unlife miserable.
Well, if one feud wasn't bad enough, now we have two to worry about. What a mess, what a mess.
And as to your previous commentary, there are anarchs in the city. They just came in recently. There was some debacle over a music festival they had, a concert. Other than that, I don't know much about them yet. The whispers of the winds have not been beneficial, but then they've been in the city less than a week.
So, what's the political standing? Are they tolerated? Are they to be exterminated?
We don't butcher anarchs in this city so long as they do not attempt to interfere with Camarilla activities. They are allowed to set up a position in the city, an unclaimed domain, and they can reside there. Or if they make arrangements to reside within others' domain with whomever it belongs. That being said, they have no voice in Camarilla politics any more than a Giovanni or a Ravnos would.
At this, he looks completely nonplussed. Never heard of the Giovanni Ravnos, being that New Orleans is a Camarilla stronghold and there isn't much of an independent voice. He's literally looking at Gate. What and what?
Oh, forgive me. You did say you were from New Orleans. I forgot. The Ravnos are little. They're Arkine's version of gypsies. They travel from place to place. They are notorious thieves. And they have unusual and interesting abilities at their command.
You learn something new every day, and what about the other ones?
Let's see, this should be intelligence in the cult, shouldn't it? I'm going into my own memories, so intelligence. And that one puny dot in occult. 2 successes. Okay. The other, the Giovanni, they are what previous worlds called necromancers.
And at this point, I'm rolling not to appear stupid, basically bluffing my ass off as to when I know what the fuck a necromancer is. Have rather high subterfuge and performance, so this is going to be 7 dice.
Awesome.
Let's see if I can bluff my way into this here. Rather good bluff.
4 successes, 4 successes. That means you maintain the bluff, and you look like you have some idea what a necromancer is.
Basically, I'm just nodding sagely while looking very intrigued and trying not to look as if I am a complete and total idiot.
Mm. So Jacobs continues on with his brief explanation. Well, I can't rightfully say I know what they can do. I've never met one in person before being in the city, and I've never seen them flaunt their abilities in front of us. But, well, they work with the dead. I just let my imagination run with that and avoid them when necessary.
Well, given that, and given the fact that technically us as kindred vampires, what have you, are technically dead, that's a terrifying prospect.
Yes, it is. No more terrifying than what certain people do with our blood.
Mm.
It really makes me wonder sometimes, just if those are the kind of abilities that the independents have, the Camarilla shouldn't be more interested in them.
Mm. The fact is that a lot of clans have their own machinations as to what they have planned, and given the vague description, I rather not hazard a guess as to what these two groups are planning. As to the one that's gypsies being travelers, and being a street kid myself for most of my life, I'd rather not hazard too many guesses, but it seems rather intriguing, to say the least, that they might be up to something in town.
Yes, they've been here a while, but I haven't seen them make any particular moves against anyone, although they do tend to generally annoy others for the time period that they were in their domain. I don't really make much of that, though. If tales about them are even remotely accurate, they annoy most kindred.
Hmm. Yes, well, this is definitely helpful in regards to my intel. Excuse me. And given the fact that he has eidetic memory and he's paying very close attention to the surroundings and your face, he's just trying to rumble around and kind of reconnect the face with the name. Mr. Crowley, wasn't it?
Yes, Jacob Crowley. I'm the Toreador Primogen for the city.
Self-control not to appear like a totally agog. Because to him, he kind of snuck up on you relatively easy, and this would be kind of, shocking. And rolling one extra dice to see how well that goes, but basically, so far, he's keeping his composure all well.
Trying to keep a straight face, is he?
Showed, yep.
Was that self-troll or
Because
just...
to him, you were just a that was self-control.
Okay.
Basically has a fairly impassible face, calm body of water. You can't tell much from his expression or his reaction. Well, forgive me, he kind of gives a courtly bow and smiles. Apologies. I had no idea as to your station.
It's not a problem. I imagine when you stalk someone for 4 or 5 blocks, you don't tell that much about them beforehand.
Like I said, I thought at first you might be human, but you smelled vaguely of decay, and that was kind of what tipped me off. Not necessarily of an open grave, mind you, but a faint dry smell, as if something was mildly desiccated, like most vampires in the smell. So that kind of gave me rise to certain suspicions, but I had no idea you actually held a position of. And he looks at you kind of wryly when he says this, authority in the city.
Jacob is just going to smirk over at him and brush a stray piece of lint off the side of his trench coat. Obviously, since they are sitting down, you would be aware of the fact that he's been carrying a long sword at his left side. Because it's kind of hard to hide that when sitting with a trench coat. Although the handle is covered enough that those watching, going in and out, don't notice it.
If you don't mind my asking, what's the blade for?
It's for when people randomly sneak up on me. There are Sabbat in the city, after all.
Oh yes, do forgive me. I do kind of cut a rebellious figure, don't I? He looks down at himself, covered in head to toe in various anti-religious, pseudo-spiritual tattoos, and just kind of laughs. You have to forgive me. I was young once too.
You seem young now. Well, not overly young. But you don't strike me as, say, Lysander's age.
Believe me, if I was anywhere near that age, I think we would be having a whole lot more severe scuffles than a mere strike of a pretty little silver thorn. I've heard legends and rumors from my own primogen as to the things Lysander got up to when he was my age, and they don't disappoint. But believe me when I say it was almost like running into King Arthur in the flesh. It's almost like you would think he would be taller.
His appearance does much to dissuade from believing his reputation, but he definitely deserves it.
And forgive me for doing this, but given the fact that my character is intensely curious and he's also have that real secret kind of demeanor, he's going to do something kind of stupid.
Go ahead.
Basically, what I'm going to do, if and when my camera catches up to me, is roll larceny dexterity to try and snatch the sword and have a better look at it, because he is, like I said, intensely curious. Had a long career as a thief before he was embraced, so he's almost appraising it and kind of getting a better look at it. I don't know if my camera's going to behave or not. Let's see if it'll actually catch up to me.
Don't forget to add your celerity dice in there.
Oh, of course, of course. Hang on, Google is being rather slow. It'll catch up in a minute.
I noticed that. And I'm going to be rolling my dexterity larceny against yours, because Jacob's not going to let you just grab his stuff.
Of course, of course. Keep in mind, this is just the intensely curious nature. He's not trying to be inherently disrespectful. Just from his perspective, it's something shiny that he doesn't normally see in modern knights, given the fact that most people don't carry around a lot of swords. Let's see if that'll work. And rolling basically another 7 dice, because he was pretty much a professional thief for most of his life. Boom. Right. And let's see how the roll goes. Once dice stream catches up with me. Seems like I do fairly well on the snatch.
Awesome.
How well do you do trying to defend against it?
Let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Alright. Once my dice show up, you can see how well we compare, but I think I outstripped you by a little bit. Alright, might have. Yeah, actually we tie. So basically what you see is this blur of motion, and my fingers just stop inches from the sword.
And just as they stop, I see Jacob's hand moving, and his hand is the hilt. He didn't grab you, but he made it to the hilt before you simply because he's closer.
Yep. And it was very, very close. Forgive the curiosity. It's not very often that we find medieval weaponry in modern times. I have a very appraising eye. He kind of pokes at one of the vaguely luminescent ice blue orbs in his face. My apologies.
Jacob will rise up. He will shift his hands as he does so that his trench coat falls properly over the sword hilt and sheath. As he walks to the door, he spotted a head starting to come around the corner. And sure enough, the bartender is there. You can hear them chatting about the clock. It's been a while. And she can't have them in there all night. Jacob convinces her, without much difficulty, to give them a bit more time. She nods. He says that they won't be more than 10 minutes, but she's giving him that look like she doesn't quite believe it. And he can be witnessed whispering something against her ear. She smiles, smacks him on the chest, and heads back to the bar. And then once she's gone, he'll shift his hand and push the trench coat back so that you can see he's carrying a scimitar at his side.
Very intriguing indeed. If I were a gambling man, I would say that you were at least embraced a couple centuries ago, but of course if you were embraced around that time, you would know that metals like silver, while being very shiny and very ostentatious, always the best to make weapons out of. So this implies you have certain targets in mind.
He just smiles, draws the blade out enough that he can tap it lightly with his finger. The ornate curved hilt sliding back in cleanly. There are no particularly ostentatious adornments, but like most scimitars, the blade does have a few jewels attached along the scabbard. Along the scabbard, yes, but along the hilt, emeralds and opals mostly. And it seems like I've lost my partner. So we wait a moment and see if he'll be back.
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. Google is sometimes a fickle thing.
Indeed.
Did anything happen while I faded out there?
Just Jacob showing a blade.
Oh. He looks almost a tad nonplussed at this display of rather ornate silver. You would think of some better uses for that particular metal than blades, though. I mean, really, you'd think iron or some alloy would work better.
As you look at the blade closer, it may be harder to see, certainly not from the edge, but as he turns it and allows more than a cursory investigation, you see that the silver is aligning. It's there along the edge and the blade, but it's not the only metal at work in the sword. And as the blade is brought about a third of the way out of the sheath, it's revealed and very obvious that it is of at least 2 other metals in its creation. It's survived a good while and hasn't managed to break much.
Very nice. Very.
Question: does your character know blades well?
He has 1 dot in melee, but he has high levels in academics. So it depends on whether you want to give it or not. I'm not sure how they would quantify that.
You would just roll intelligence in your academics because it would just be a matter of worldly knowledge. That the style of the blade, again, it's a saber, you would recognize it if you did as coming from the Middle East, called Kilish, unless I'm mispronouncing that. I probably am, because I haven't looked up the pronunciation in a while.
Alrighty, Roo. And we'll see how that goes. And by the way, I'm spending a little power, so hopefully we'll at least have 1 success, if nothing else. And 3 success. Very nice. Very nice.
Okay, I did say that. That's good enough. You'll recognize it.
Yep. Middle Eastern, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Not everybody notices that.
Very nice, very nice. Devin makes his way over to the bartender and kind of tries to smooth things over a bit, whispering that he is somewhat of a famous performer, being actually a rather well-known guitarist before he had to go into hiding. So and this is him throwing you under the bus a little bit, if my friend here is willing to help me out in any respect, I'm sure that we can make up for lost time with a bit of entertainment, you know, keep things lively around here.
Well, she's going to reply that she's never minding entertainment, but as you'll no doubt notice, she's on her way to closing now. So unless someone comes in the next 10 or 15 minutes, you'll have to try again tomorrow. But if you're willing to make an arrangement to come by and perform something, she's never opposed.
Oh, certainly. I could use the employment element now, then It certainly helps me to keep involved with the local community. He, in a very, very French style, just kind of reaches out to shake her hand and just kind of gently kisses it in kind of the lingering way that most of these dashing, rakish types do. Just sort of giving her this old sly, almost predatory smile.
She doesn't quite blush, really. She smiles back in return. The look is polite, maybe a bit sultry, but she's not quite falling for it. She's interested enough that if she wasn't working, she would have probably gone to get a drink with you.
Another time, mon cher. Well, the night is young, my friend. I'm sorry to have inconvenienced you thus far.
From what you told me, it was no inconvenience at all. Forward to meeting with you in the future.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting stay while I'm here. He makes his way out towards the door, giving the bartender a little wave, and just gives you a curt nod and a slight bow.
Jacob is making his way out with a little more of the same. He stops, asks the lady just what they were talking about. He hadn't been listening in overly much. We'd caught a word or two. She tells him just paying rent for the room that they had appropriated. He sighs, smiles in understanding. He tells her well, she'll see him around. He's been by her before. She knows he comes in once a week or once every other week. And gives him the same kind of look in reply to his attempted flirtation that she gave the other. Pretty boys, roguish boys. It seems working with the bartender position is giving her resistance against all sorts. So he slides on out the door and makes a turn to head towards my bookstore and give it one more cursory look before he turns in for the evening.
Very pleasant evening. I look forward to talking to you again. Farewell, my dear friend.
Farewell, Devon. And as they part ways, the scene shall fall to a close.